Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm your host Dylan Silver, and today on the show we have Scott Parker. Scott is the founder, CEO, and master electrician of Rhino Electric Services, located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with over 30 years of experience in the electrical industry. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dylan, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before we hopped on here, I let you know, I always love to hear folks' entry point into the real estate or the service space, because no two stories are alike.
Yeah, you got it, man. So, yeah, I've been doing electrical work for about 34 years now. So I was in my early 20s, or right about 20 years old. I was looking for what I was going to do for a living. I come from a blue-collar family. My dad was a carpenter. My grandfather was an electrician. Two of my dad's brothers were carpenters, and the younger brother was an electrician. So I kind of come from a, blue-collar family where we like to work on stuff. We like to work with our hands. So I guess, man, since I was able to walk, my dad's had me on some kind of construction job somewhere. And I decided to follow my grandfather in the electrical trade. So when I went to apply for an electrical job, my first day on the job, I literally knew I found what I was going to do the rest of my life. And I still learn something new every day. I love it. We started our own business just about 6 years ago. Due to some reasons outside of my control, my wife's control, we found ourselves unemployed, and we just started a business. I don't know. We kind of lost my mind.
From there, divine intervention.
Yeah, that's right.
Scott, do you remember how old you were when you got into the electrical trade?
I was 20.
20 years old. So you're 20 years old, but you'd been in and around it for your whole life. At that point, you said a little bit about how, you felt right at home. Did you know right then and there this was going to be your lifelong career?
I did. First day of electrical work, I knew. I came home and told my wife now, my girlfriend then, I found what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I had tried working in body shops. I tried working, driving trucks and just, different things. I knew an office job in college wasn't going to be for me. It just wasn't. I like to work with my hands. I enjoy building things. I really love troubleshooting electrical problems. That is just what I'm passionate about.
So this
Especially
is
if you send another electrician over that can't find it, and then you call me, it's game on, man. I love the challenge.
Let me solve the problem no one else can solve, right?
That's right.
So, I haven't studied electrical work, but I have studied in and around electrical engineering. I never completed my coursework, but there's a lot of electrical that goes into that. And let me tell you what, as you know, Scott, circuits is one of the most difficult courses that you could possibly get yourself involved in. And so I have infinite respect for all electricians. And to be honest, I feel like of the trades, it's probably not the lowest barrier to entry. And you have to use a lot of it takes an intellectual to be an electrician. So as you were starting and then as you were growing, is that kind of some of the appeal to it to you?
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
I think so. I don't know that I had thought about doing anything else. I did some carpentry work in between school, during the summer with my dad, and I enjoyed building things, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. So the electrical, like I said, it's the troubleshoot, it's the problem solving. I think that I really enjoy. I love it.
And to folks who may be listening here and thinking about, the problem solving aspect of it, as real estate investors or as real estate operators, I like to say you're a problem solver, right? What is your real skill set? Yeah, it's talking to people. Yeah, of course you have to understand contracts and have some familiarity with local ordinances and statutes and so on and so forth. But you're really a problem solver. So Scott, as you scaled in your career as an electrician, working your way up to master electrician, and you're dealing with these types of issues, what were some of the growth and the obstacles that you faced, and what was it a very clear how to get through them, or were there times where it wasn't so clear?
I'll start at the beginning when I was an apprentice. They opened a Votech school in my area, and I immediately got in that class. And one of the things I did, which I guess I got picked on a little bit, I sat in the front of the class, and this is how long ago, this was in the 90s, with a tape recorder, and I recorded everything that teacher said, and I listened to those tapes in my car over and over again to make myself learn. And the guys used to pick on me because I would tell them, I'm not going to be a good electrician. I'm going to be the best electrician. And I took it real serious. And then, as I'll tell you from learning, starting a business, was I started on my own, and I quickly found myself, getting some work. And I was working during the day. I would estimate in the evenings. I would do invoicing at night. And I found myself real quickly getting overwhelmed, working 7 days a week, 12, 14, 16 hours a day. And so that was one challenge for sure, getting
Yeah.
into the electrical space as far as a business owner is concerned.
So you're working your way through this, and at some point in time, I mean, you knew from the beginning that this was going to be your lifelong career, but at some point in time, did you have an eye set on, I'm going to one day be a business owner myself, or was this divine intervention?
I think divine intervention, but it's a great question because my mother told me that I was actually born an entrepreneur. When I was very young, I'll tell you just a funny story real quick. When I was very young, I must have been probably less than 5 years old. I vaguely remember this. I set up a stand at the end of our driveway, and I was selling pennies for nickels. And the only customer I had was my mother. So it was probably an unsuccessful business. And I tried starting a car detail business when I was, right out of high school for a little while. And I found out during the wintertime, not many people wanted their cars cleaned. And so I struggled there. But yeah, I've always thought about having my own business. I did work for one company solid for 20 years. And I treated that company like it was mine. I feel like I gave them a lot. And
Yeah, I mean, 20 years is 2 decades of your time. That's in many cases, a quarter of someone's life, or more in some cases. So a good long chunk of time. For folks who might be unfamiliar, you're Scott, in Louisiana, how long does it take for someone to be an outsider, no license at all, not not an apprentice, nothing, to then being a master electrician?
I would say now there's some special cases here, but I would say the average electrician probably about 8 to 10 years to reach the master level, to
Okay.
really get, unless they're just um, really hard learners and they spend a lot of time in the code book and stuff.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where it took me. I moved up into a journeyman electrical type position pretty quick because I could run conduit, and the company I was working for bumped me up to a journeyman because I could run conduit real good. and that's where I kind of got started. But I do feel like I advanced a little sooner because I missed out on opportunities of learning terminating wire and things like that. So it took me a little longer to get into that. But about 4 or 5 years to become a journeyman electrician, and maybe 8 to 10 be a master.
And so for me, selfishly, because I'm really ignorant of the different designations here. Master versus journeyman. Master means you can have your own crew and basically you can be insured and bonded. Is that the difference here? Or explain to me the difference.
Yes, a master electrician in our area in Louisiana, you're not actually required to have a journeyman or master electrician license in Louisiana.
Huh.
They do push it in New Orleans and in Lake Charles, Louisiana. There's kind
Uh-huh.
of a strong union presence in those two cities, and so they push it there. And but getting the master electrician was as important to me. It's something I wanted
Yeah,
to accomplish,
for
and
sure.
I did take tests in some other states to
Mm,
get licensed in a few other states when I was working with a company I was their license holder
yeah.
for building cell phone towers.
If you're looking for consistent, high quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency, it's the most sophisticated, data driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
There's so many different questions that I have, and I've actually at myself before I got into the real estate space full time. I just kind of on a whim said I'm just going to get a plumber's apprentice license, different trade, right? But I just see the trades expanding so rapidly, and it really being ripe for entrepreneurs to come on in because you have what seems to be a little bit of a void right now with people being apprentices, and I think we need more of it. I'd love to get your feedback on that. Do you see the trades right now really just being ripe for people to come on in and young entrepreneurs and to make a career out of it?
I'll tell you this, when COVID hit and everybody else at restaurants and hotels and various types of businesses were sitting at home not working, electricians were freaking booming, man. Because people were at home and they wanted things done while they were at home.
Yeah,
And I mean, we blew up during COVID. And so private equity took note of that. And so you're seeing a lot of private equity coming into the trade spaces, buying up companies, especially the trifecta groups, the HVAC, plumbing, electrical
yeah.
type companies. Matter of fact, one of the largest companies in the Baton Rouge area, I just heard yesterday, they just sold, and I'm assuming it's to private equity. I haven't had a chance to really research that yet, but there's a lot going on, man. They saw that we were essential, and when they were losing money on their investments in resorts and hotels and those types of things, they turned that attention over to the trades.
I think it's ripe for innovation, and I think people who are able to utilize kind of almost a commercial or a retail centric focus, putting the focus on the consumer and bringing that type of modern prospecting techniques, modern communication techniques, transparency, they're really going to differentiate themselves. And I'm imagining as you've grown, you've been able to see a lot of that. No one has a crystal ball, right? But where do you see in the next year, year and a half, 2 years, 5 years, homeowners, single family residential homeowners going as far as for any type of work on their homes? Do you think that the tools that people will use to reach out will be the same? Is it a Google search, you think, or will there be apps and different ways where people can, submit for bids and so on and so forth?
Great question. We get a lot on Google, but there are constantly innovations and in technology that's coming. There's ways to get on Alexa now to find an electrician,
Wow.
so I see things like that. I've heard some rumors that there's going to be some, just in reading about technology, some of the stuff that could be coming,
Yeah.
and Alexa would probably be a strong one. There is a lot of changes with AI now, with Chat GPT and these types of things, being able to find a lot of things about electricians.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what, Scott, to your point, I don't know how new this is, but I was using ChatGPT to recently, yesterday, and looking up various people that I knew in the real estate space. And about 6 months ago, if you did this, nothing would come up. But it was coming up with like a detailed breakdown, even to the point of like their strategy, their exit strategy in the real estate space. So I'm imagining, if I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I'm at in DFW Metroplex in Texas, North Dallas, that these are going to be tools which people will continue to utilize and grow significantly here. But pivoting a bit here, Scott, before we hopped on, you mentioned you have the 10 most common electrical issues. Dive into that for us here. I would love to hear about this.
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
So one of the niches we found, and I'm about to let my secret out, is we have found for us, some electricians don't like it, but working with home inspectors and realtors, doing the repair work on home inspections. Last year, the numbers that I found in 2024, which is supposedly the worst year in 30 years, in 3 decades, the real estate market. And so I'm using 2024 numbers. According to what I found on the Greater Baton Rouge Association of Realtors, that they sold 8,903 houses in 2024 in the Greater Baton Rouge area, which is like 3 parishes. Y'all would call counties, we call parishes.
Yeah.
And so I did the math on that. That's 8,903 possible opportunities to bid on inspection type work. But anyway, it led me to working with realtors when they get home inspections, to be able to guide their clients on how on buying houses when they see the inspection report, and the inspector uses things like double tap neutrals.
Mm-hmm.
I've created a document for my realtors and their clients to be able to know what a double tap neutral is, and I've added pictures so they can see what it looks like. And I've given a description of what it means, and what it normally means is they've taken more than one neutral wire and landed it on what's called the neutral bus in the bar, where the white wires, they'll put more than one under a screw. And what the code calls for now, they did it for years. Code calls now, unless the panel is labeled and it specifically says you can land more than one wire on that screw, you can only put one white wire under each screw. So in a home inspection, we would go in and move those neutrals down individually to each screw. And then the other things would be missing GFCIs near wet areas, sinks, kitchens, laundry rooms, outdoors, bathrooms. It is a big one. Open splices, we find this a lot. And what that is saying, there's open junction boxes and exposed wiring splices in the attic, sitting on the insulation. There's wire nuts and wire just laying on the insulation up there, not in a box. So splices need to be contained in a box. And the other one was double tap breakers. There are some square D breakers that are intended to have 2 wires connected to them, but what we like to see, me personally, I like to have 1 circuit per breaker. Mm-hmm. And that way, I don't have a lot of confusion there when I'm trying to label the panel or even try to troubleshoot. And so double tapping breakers means there's 2 wires hooked to 1 breaker, sometimes more than 2. The other thing is, and I see this a ton, is incorrect breakers installed in electrical panels. So let's say the electrical panel is a square D home line panel. It'll say HOM. The only breaker that is allowed, listed by Schneider, the owner of Square D, is a Square D home line breaker. And I constantly see people putting GE breakers, Eaton breakers, Siemens breakers in these panels, and it's not listed for that. So I have seen times where breakers don't fit properly, and they can be a bit of a fire hazard. If nothing else, definitely could damage your electrical panel and cost you a lot of money to get it replaced.
I should probably know this, Scott, but all these issues that You mentioned here this would cause the homeowner to fail an inspection, right? But would the home still be? Could you still potentially find a buyer with these issues? Or are these such big red flags that a buyer would say, I can't do this?
It it depends on sometimes the inspector on how scary they get on the inspection. But there are some houses that are older that man, I've seen 200-page inspection reports before.
Oh
The
no.
average is probably 60 to 90-page inspections, a lot on the older homes. Most of the investors that I work with don't get home inspections. They kind of buy a lot of them buy the
Yeah.
houses as is. And then what I recommend they do before they put the house on the market is spend the $300-400, whatever it is, for a home inspector to come in, do a pre-inspection. Let's get these things addressed. That way we don't scare the buyers when they come in, when we turn it over to a realtor
Yep.
and we're trying to sell that investment property, that
And
flip house.
for folks that are listening and maybe unclear why this is such a big issue, if you're an investor, you would understand, but if you're on the outside looking in, you may say, well, it's an inspection, you find it, and then you can remedy it. The issue is, I'm fairly certain Louisiana is the same as Texas. Uh, if you find these issues, then they are public. It's not like you can fix it and then the inspection report is done. It'll be out there that this was an issue and that it was remedied. So you got to imagine if you're a buyer and you're looking at this, even if it was remedied, the fact that there were X, Y, and Z issues in the first place, which is now public and unerasable, could cause you to say, I'm going to pass on that home.
Right. I'll tell you, there's many states in our country that require licensed electricians to do any type of electrical work. Well, in Louisiana, if you can say electrician, you can pretty much do electrical work. When I see DIY stuff all the time on these houses, especially these investment type houses, I just see, I mean, crazy stuff. Wires spliced all over the place, wrong size breakers. Some people think if a breaker trips in your kitchen on a 20 amp breaker, they'll just put a 30 amp breaker. Maybe and the wire is not rated for that type of amperage.
Scott, talking about these issues here, I'm sure across your career, dealing with different eras of properties, you must have come across standard issues that come up. So, without giving away all the game here, Scott, so to speak, if you go from 50s, let's say, to 70s, and 70s to 90s, and 90s to 2010s, and then 2010s to where we are today, 2025s, are there sometimes common electrical issues that come up depending on which decade the home was built in?
Yes, sir. So from the 50s to the 70s, what I see a lot of is aluminum wiring. There's many areas in the Baton Rouge. If they tell me usually kind of an area, I usually know there's probably aluminum wire in certain areas. So aluminum wire, as you know, is probably your house is about 55% more, uh, potential to catch on fire because
Oh, really?
aluminum wire. Sometimes I see people, they'll use these purple wire nuts and they sell them. But if you read the special listing, I don't want to get too deep in the rabbit hole. I'm going to shoot over people's heads because I'm a nerd that studies this stuff. But I would suggest this: when you have aluminum wire in an investment property, the smart thing to do is invest in these little connectors called Alumicons. Get a licensed electrician that knows how to install them. You have to use a torquing screwdriver. But the CSPC, the Consumer Safety Product Commission, which is ran by the United States government, recommends three fixes for aluminum wire. Number one, rewire the house. Very expensive. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
25,000 on up to rewire a house, at least.
Right.
The second is called Copaloom. The closest, um, you have to be licensed and certified to work with Copaloom, and the company that runs that rents a crimping tool to you for $4,500.
Hmm.
They won't sell them. You have to rent them, and you have to be certified through them. The closest person to Baton Rouge is in Texas, and so an investor over here would not want to spend money on Copaloom. They just assume rewire the house.
Yeah.
So the third thing that the Consumer Safety Product Commission recommends is these Alumicons that I'm telling you. There are Some supply houses that carry them, you usually got to order them online. But what you do is you connect the aluminum wire, you take the aluminum wire off of the device, you put it in this little Alumicon connector, and then you put copper wire from that connector to the device, like the receptacle, the light switch, the light fixture, any of that type of stuff. And then the difference is inside the electrical panel, breakers are listed for copper and aluminum wire, so you don't have to have them in your electrical panel.
Now,
So that
Scott,
is
when if I'm listing my house, the home was built in the 50s, is this going to be something that's flagged on an inspection report if it's all aluminum with none of these fixes?
absolutely, they're going to bring it up. I had an investor call me today, as a matter of fact, that her insurance company on one of her rental properties is not wanting to insure her until she has the aluminum wiring inspected.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, what they want me to inspect. It's aluminum wire. It's there. So
Yeah.
they make, by the National Electrical Code, you can put what is called a copper aluminum device. They're receptacles that are made for aluminum. What I don't like about them is aluminum wire, as it heats up, it expands and contracts. So it could get loose on that screw on the receptacle. And that's where we see them burn up.
Mm.
And those houses did not have arc fault protection. And in most cases, the breaker panel is so old, you can't put arc fault protection in there. You can put arc fault type receptacles. I don't know if they make arc faults that allow aluminum wire. The second thing I will tell you this real quick is the two-wire electrical system. Back in the 50s and maybe not quite into the 70s, but the 50s, 60s, houses were wired without a ground wire. So there's only two wires.
Hmm.
And so what I see investors do, they go in there, they get their flipping crew and they don't pull a permit or something. They want to change the devices and they take the non-grounded, the two-prong receptacle out and they put three-prong receptacles. And that's a code violation. There's no way to do that and stay within code, with exception to you can put at what they call the head of the circuit, at the beginning of the circuit, you can put a ground fault receptacle, a GFCI receptacle, or you can put a ground fault breaker. Then you can change them to three-prong, and you have to put a little sticker on every receptacle that's protected by that ground fault that it is a no equipment ground fault protected.
So,
So
Scott, when investors are doing this, right, and maybe they don't go with someone who's licensed, right, and they're just using their own crew, uh, I'm imagining it's an unusual spot because if I heard you correctly earlier, you are allowed to do electrical work without a license in Louisiana. However, I'm still imagining that if the city finds that you're doing things improperly or not up to code, that they can shut it down. But how would they even know if they're not on the property? So it's almost like a catch-22, like don't get caught, but if you get caught, then you're going to get shut down.
well, I'll tell you the dead giveaway is a dumpster sitting in front of a house. I had an investor friend of mine. I do a lot of flip houses with him. This guy's insane. He does like 10 a month, man. He kills
Wow.
me. But he's aggressive. He had one where he put a dumpster out front of the house, and an inspector happened to be in that neighborhood and saw the dumpster and just dropped by to see what was going on. They were moving walls. And when you start moving walls and you're messing with the structure, man, you're supposed to be pulling permits
Right.
and getting inspections
And
because
so
you're messing with the framing.
at that point, the inspector can practically see from the street what's going on. He doesn't even have to be in the property, and so that gives them, some type of cause, if you will, to say, hey, you need permits for this. We're shutting this thing down.
Yeah.
Okay. From there, chronologically, going from 70s to onward, are there still issues, or are we in the clear if we buy a home after the 70s in Louisiana?
After the 70s. So the biggest thing I see, like I said, is the doubled up neutrals. Um, making so from the 70s to probably into the 80s, there were Federal Pacific electrical panels, and those are known fire hazards. You just
Huh.
Google FPE. Anybody that's watching this, if you buy an investment property or something, and you got a home that has a Federal Pacific FPE electrical panel, you want to get that out of there. That's not good. Those breakers do not trip properly, and they did some shady business to get the UL listing on those panels.
Yeah.
Also, you want to pay attention to Sylvania electrical panels. They have some that's called Pushmatic. A lot of those old ones from the 70s are recall. Insurance companies in some cases won't insure a property with those panels, so you want to get those out of there. They used to be panels put in that were called split bus panels, and they would be. I'm gonna try not to go over y'all's head here. The wiring would come from the electrical meter outside into the panel to some lugs, some little connections. And then they would have about 6 breakers on the top, 2 pole breakers. So you would have like your dryer, air conditioning equipment, water heater if it was electric, um, your condensing unit outside. I'm trying to think, 220 type stuff. And then one of those breakers would be marked main, and it would kill the bottom half of that panel. So the panel would be split in 2 spaces. So that is what you'd see in a lot of 70s and 80s type houses. You would see
Interesting.
those types of panels.
So
And
Scott, if you have a home and you're concerned about this, and you do an inspection beforehand, the inspector should know what to look for. But these are kind of niche um, topics. I'm imagining sometimes an inspector might potentially miss this. Is that something that could happen if you're doing a
absolutely.
pre-inspection beforehand?
Absolutely. I got a home inspection from an inspector recently that inspected a home. I needed to go look at this particular house because they had some issues I needed to look at, and there was no main electrical breaker in the panel, in the
Oh,
electrical panel. No main shutoff. You had to turn off over 30 breakers to shut power down to this house. This house was built new construction, got inspected by a state inspector who obviously overlooked that it didn't have a main breaker.
wow.
And so the inspector missed that.
This is really, for me listening to this, and I'm a newly licensed real estate agent in Texas. I got my license this week, but different state here. But you hear these things and you think, well, it's not a one size fits all because you think, well, if I bring an inspector out and I'm selling my home, the inspector will catch what another inspector catches. But with some of these, you're talking differences based on decade, 50s, 60s aluminum, right? But then you're talking about, Silvana, different brands of companies that could really cause you to fail an inspection or for the home not to be insured. And so it kind of seems like if you want to be checking off all of the boxes, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, you might want to have an electrician come out there in addition to an inspector if you really want to be sure.
Hmm. So one thing I would say in hiring an inspector, man, look, don't go with the cheapest inspector. You know what I mean? It's just like going with the cheapest electrician. You're going to get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Try to find that inspector that's got some really good reviews, because I can think of 7 inspectors here in Baton Rouge, man, that are very thorough. It's very slim chance they're going to miss some.
Miss
These guys
anything.
are very thorough. Now, some realtors don't like them because they're going to find everything,
Yeah.
and could kill a sale. But
In a
we're
sense.
trying to protect the
Yeah.
buyer, you know?
You got to protect the buyer, and I would imagine that if you bring out, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Scott, but in Louisiana, if you pay an inspector like a pre-inspection before the state inspects it, that is not disclosed. That you can pay that to for your client to know as a listing agent, and then as the seller, hey, what are the things that the state could find? And as long as you remedy it before the state does, is that something that they have to disclose? Do you know?
I don't think so. It's not a bad idea to let them know that you did it.
Yeah.
My intent was, this is if you pull permits to do, you're updating the kitchen and you're going to do some rewiring, you're going to do some update, modernized kitchen, because most flip houses, that's one of the first things they do, go in and update the kitchen, and make you want the kitchen to pop. That sells houses, kitchens,
Right.
real nice bathrooms, those types of things. So
For sure.
you may be pulling permits in other parts of the country. So you're going to have the state inspector come in, inspect things. He passes, but before you list the house to sell, the flip property, that's when I would bring a home inspector in, just to take a quick peek at everything, find those things, so that you don't have a buyer come in and you have 30 issues on the house.
I
You can
see. Yeah.
address those while you have your crew there doing the flip. Um,
Yeah.
to make some necessary, caulk windows and things that they might have missed doing during the flip or something. There's so many things that inspectors find: cracks in bricks, and doors don't seal properly, and some electrical issues. And if you could head all that off, and then when that buyer gets their home inspector to come in and inspect it, and he only finds maybe 2 or 3 things or nothing, then the person has a better chance of you're going to close that deal better. I would,
Right.
you know.
I think, to your point, Scott, I'm thinking about it from the Texas perspective, y- if you can get it resolved before the buyer finds it and you disclose everything, that's the way you want to be. Yeah, in Texas, you'd have to let them know one way or the other. If you're getting work done to the home, you're gonna have to disclose that.
Yeah.
But if you don't get the work done and then the buyer finds it and then you have to do the work, then it's almost like, well, what else is there wrong with this home? If we found it, what else is there? But pivoting a bit here, Scott, in your career working with investors, working with just residential homeowners, or I shouldn't say just, but residential homeowners who need electrical work done. What have you found has been preferable to you, and also to future electricians who are looking at, do I want to work with investors? Do I want to work and more cater to families? What advice would you have?
I would make sure I don't know how you would necessarily do it. You need to make sure that investor has the money to do it. I did some work with an investor that went south on I made a mistake. This is what I did. I worked a deal with him. I said, look, I will do the job. When you sell the house, you can pay me. Well, the house he spent way too much money. The house didn't profit. He actually lost money and I didn't get paid because he didn't have the money. And I just had to eat it. I'm still been after him for 2 years now trying to get paid.
Yeah.
And he's like disappeared. So I would carefully look at the investors. Maybe ask them some questions. How many flips have they done? How are they strong in this? I would kind of like be weary of a first time flipper,
Okay.
because they probably haven't stubbed their toe on a flip yet. And I know there's investors listening right now going, "Yeah, I know that. I know what I did on that first flip," because I'm able to work with some that people that I know that are solid financially, and I'm not the right electrician for every flipper, but we.
To your point, Scott, I've spoken with a number of individuals who talk about their first flip, right? And it's a learning experience. I've heard this term many times, an education, right? And so you might not, you may be probable not to make money in your first flip at this point, especially with margins getting lower and lower on these flips. I can speak for DFW, for instance. And so, just word of caution to everybody in the real estate space is, you want to have your projections accurate. You want to make sure that you're purchasing the property for the right amount, and that your ARV and your exit is going to be correct, because there's so much that can come up, right? As soon as you break down a wall, now you're finding X, Y, and Z, and now I learned if you're in the 50s, the home could be aluminum, and so with the wiring, there's so much that goes on. So just do your due diligence, for sure, if you're a first time flipper. But we are coming up on time here, Scott. Where can folks go to get a hold of you?
Man, I tell you, I'm 54 years old, so I'm very active on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook at Scott Parker. My Facebook handle, I think, is like Chemo Warrior. I'm a leukemia survivor, so way back when I started Facebook, I called myself the Chemo Warrior. But you can find me, Scott Parker from Baton Rouge. My company is Rhino Electric Services, and you can find us on Facebook there as well. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm not real involved in Instagram, but I do have an account there. I'm looking for some young people to get me involved in Instagram more than I am.
We'll have to have you back on the podcast here, Scott. You're actually the first electrician that I've had on the show, and I do think it's a really interesting perspective. We could probably fill up a whole other 2 episodes with just little things to look out for when you're looking at homes in different decades, specifically as a flipper or as a new buyer, right? But Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Man, I appreciate you having me. I will throw my email address out there. If there's an investor that has a question electrically, want to just bump it by me, it's scott.parker@rhinoelectric.net. And I'm glad to answer any questions. Just give me a minute. I'm usually working during the day, but I'll get to you in the evening. We'll get you some questions answered.
Thanks for coming on, Scott.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.